Continuing the journey on the 2023 laptop reviews, now I have here the Lenovo Legion Slim 5 for 2023 featuring the RTX 4060, and in this video I'll give you my thoughts, impressions, gameplay performance and benchmarks, as well as some other details about features that also help this to stand out from the Legion Pro series, particularly the Legion Pro 7i, and kind of how it compares against that and the other Lenovo offerings feature-wise. So let's jump right in with the specs, and then we'll move on to some benchmarks and then look at some of the performance and other nitpicks about this particular device. A quick look at the specs here reveals that we're featuring a Ryzen 7 7840HS 8-core 16-thread CPU. This is of the Zen 4 variety that was revealed and basically released in the beginning of this year at CES. Zen 4 promises some big significant improvements over the Zen 3 generations of past years, so we should have some significant CPU performance uplift versus Zen 3 from last year and the year before. We've also got 16 gigs of dual channel memory at the faster 5600 megahertz speeds. Thanks for that, Lenovo. A 1TB SSD drive, and of course that beautiful 16-inch Quad HD Plus 165Hz 16:10 panel. And the 4060 8GB here are the standout features of this particular laptop. Let's jump into and start looking at some of the details. Aside from the specs, let's look at some of the actual performance on this laptop here. So starting with PCMark 10, we've got a score of 7,386, fairly respectable here. And let's talk about the open or the Geekbench performance results here. So starting with the CPU, we've got a single score of 1974, single core score of 1974, and a multi-core score of 10,328. We'll jump into then the GPU benchmark. So starting with the OpenCL score, we've got 92,000. And we look at the Vulkan score, we've got 32,474. And all of this testing was done using the drivers. That's 536.23. I had to back down the drivers because some of the games, there was some artifacting happening, particularly in Jedi Survivor, and also some other issues with some of the other games. So I had to back down from the latest drivers to 536.23 to get stable performance and be able to get testing. There's also an issue with MSI Afterburner not being able to actually capture some of the new AMD CPU stats because of the embargo and the Ukraine war and all that stuff that's going on. And the person that was working on that open source tool has not been working on it and updating it because he's not getting paid, etc., etc. That's a whole another story here. But anyway, that said, if we look at some of the scores here with the DLSS feature set, we've got with DLSS on about 53 frames and with off about 12 frames per second. And then if we look at the VRS feature set, we've got with VRS turned on 845 frames per second. This is on 3D Mark 10. And the sampler feedback, with sampler feedback on, we've got 314 frames per second. PCI Express 13.44 gigabytes per second is the actual PCI bandwidth, and the mesh shader feature test gives us 366 frames per second. DirectX ray tracing is 25 frames per second. We've got the CPU profile here, and 52,000 points in Night Raid, 24,000 and change in Firestrike. In Firestrike Extreme, about 12,000 points nearly. Firestrike Ultra is about 6,000 points. Time Spy is 10,648 points. Time Spy Extreme is 5,000, and Port Royal is 5897. And finally, Speedway gives us a score of 2633. Let's begin by looking at the build quality here and an overview of the port situation that's on offer here on the Lenovo Legion Slim 5. So beginning with the top, we've got an aluminum lid, a nice Legion logo in the side here, and another Lenovo badge on the side here. A classy look, not going to be out of place in an office or in a work situation, even school. And of course, if you're a gamer, you're not going to be giving away all the gamer bling and vibes just by having this laptop around you. So the metal lid does take, a few fingerprints, but it's actually overall quite resistant. You can see there's some dust and grime here that has built up over the month that I've basically been using this laptop. On the front side here, we've got a nice little lip to help catch to open the laptop. That's a very nice touch. I don't understand why the Omen 17, for example, cannot have this. It's so flat. You have to really dig in with your fingernail there to get it open. That's a nice touch. The bottom cover here is actually plastic, so it's not the aluminum that you have on the top. And you've got two fans here, as you can see. Very typical setup for a gaming laptop. The Legion 5, particularly the Slim series, about portability and lightweight rather than the raw horsepower you would get with somewhere like the Alienwares, which now come with 4 fans. Some of the other laptops are also coming with 4 fans as well. Let's look at the port situation along the back. We've got two USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A ports. So thank you, Lenovo, for giving us all of the USB ports to be USB 3.2 Gen 2, which is the latest standard. You get the fastest speeds here. One of these has power delivery to allow for charging your phone. Let's say if you have your laptop turned off or the lid is closed, you can plug in your phone here and it'll help charge your tablet or your phone. Got full gigabit RJ45 Ethernet port. And we've got an HDMI 2.1 port that's connected directly to the RTX 40 inside this laptop. So you're going to get up to 8K at 60 FPS over this port. And we've got the square tip, typical charger that we get from Lenovo with 230 watts on the power brick for this device. On the left-hand side, we've got two USB Type-C ports. Again, these are 3.2 Gen 2, with one of them having USB power delivery, and the power delivery has been up this year now to 140 watts maximum, so that's a little bit of a boost over the traditional 100 watts that we've had of years past. And here we've got a headphone microphone combo jack. As we said, nothing on the front. And then on the right hand side of this device, we've got a e-shutter switch for electronic shutter switch for the camera. If you toggle this, it will basically disconnect the webcam and turn it off essentially. And we've got a full-size USB, and we've got a full-sized SD card reader here. And just like previous years, we've got markings here to indicate what port is what. However, one thing Lenovo has taken a step back on this year is to remove the illumination from these. On previous models and iterations, these icons were illuminated, which I thought was a fantastic touch to see in the dark if you're plugging stuff into the back of the device. However, for some reason, Lenovo has decided to move backward on that step, and in all of the laptops, the Legion laptops this year, that has been removed. Sad to say why they did that, but it is what it is. And overall, if you look at the thickness of this laptop, it's not exactly a slim laptop, but it's also not thick either. I would say this is somewhere in between. It's a decent size offering, but it's not going to win any awards for thin laptop of the year. As for storage in this Lenovo Legion Slim 5, we've got a Western Digital provided PCIe Gen 4 SSD at 1 TB. And if you look here at the speeds, it's actually very, very good performer. I personally have Western Digital SN850X devices in all of my PCs at 2 TB each, and they're fantastic devices here. So we're hitting practically the theoretical maximum of 7,000 megabytes per second for read speeds on Gen 4 speeds, and we're very, very high speeds in terms of the write speeds as well, well over 5,000 megabytes per second. Excellent performer. It's of the 2280 type variety. This Lenovo Slim 5 comes with 2 M.2 SSD slots. One is populated with the device that you see here. There is another slot that's available for you to populate at a later date. So you can definitely upgrade with another M.2 2280 Gen 4 SSD to basically go up to potentially a 4 TB device in that slot. So that would give you a total of 4 and 4, 8 TB is potentially possible with the maximum storage capacity of this device. And as I mentioned, on the right hand side of the device, you also have an SD card reader, which basically can accept mini SD with or micro SD with an adapter or a full-size SD card slot, so that's very nice to have. It has decent speeds. It's not the fastest one around, but you're not going to be complaining about very low speeds. It's a nice to have feature, and actually very well rounds out the laptop's port offerings on the Lenovo Legion Slim 5 for 2023. Talking a little bit more about the display on this Lenovo Legion Slim 5, we've got a 16-inch QHD Plus display. If we look here in the Windows display control panel, that's 2560 by 1600 resolution, which means we're running at a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. By default, the refresh rate of this display is 165 Hertz. And we know that we've got Advanced Optimus on board to help you get that better battery life away from the wall, and when you're plugged in to get that full refresh rate at 165 Hertz and maximum power for gaming. Another nice thing to note is because this response time for this particular panel is actually 5 milliseconds and not 3, which is much more common now. And Lenovo has opted for a overdrive option here in the Lenovo Vantage software. You just simply go in here, toggle this on, and it will overdrive your panel to 3 milliseconds. I found this to have very little adverse effects, if any, that were noticeable, especially when playing first-person shooters like Overwatch, or if you're playing Fortnite. it does add that little extra bit of response time that's needed to get those kills. So not a bad feature to have. Thank you for implementing this, Lenovo. And overall, I think it's a better experience. One other nice thing I want to point out with this display, and of course this applies to most of the Legion series, is when you unplug the device, it toggles back to 60 Hertz. And when you plug the device back in, it automatically toggles up to 165 Hertz, which is the full refresh rate of this display. Alright, and as for thermals on this device, we're going to be doing some sound profile testing with the fan noise using the FurMark benchmark. So this one allows us to hit the full potential of this GPU, which means we're going to get above that 115 watts or hit that 115 watts maximum. And we may even get into the dynamic boost territory, which can add another 25 watts on top of that for a maximum rating of 140 watts. Now, this is not reflective of what you see in games, but this helps to build up a lot of heat on the laptop, and we can use the sound meter here to get some accurate test results to see what type of noise floor we can get or what kind of noise levels we can expect from this laptop in the various sound profiles. So let's put it here next to the exhaust vent. I'll place it here carefully so you guys can see. Let's remove it from the glare. All right. And so right now we're operating in silent mode. So in silent mode, the laptop runs at around 60 watts on the GPU, and I'm seeing about 15 roughly watts on the Ryzen 7 7840HS, and we've got roughly 42 to 43 decibels. Now we'll switch into auto mode, which is balanced in Lenovo Vantage. In this mode, the GPU jumps up to around 80 watts, and the CPU is pushed to about 20 watts, maybe a 15 to 20 watt range. And we're getting on the noise meter here, roughly 50 decibels of noise. And finally, into performance mode, we now see the GPU hitting about 125 watts, so that means we've got the full 115 watts of the GPU, plus we're getting a little bit of dynamic boost kicking in. But what's most amazing here is that Zen 4 CPU at only about 18 watts is giving us 4400 megahertz. So 4.4 gigahertz clock speeds at under 20 watts is just simply stunning. I didn't even know this was possible. And let's look at here the noise meter. So we've got about 56 decibels that's coming out of this laptop. Mind you, there is a difference that's noticeable when you're at ear level versus what you're seeing closer to the laptop. And of course, if I go around back to where the vents are, it will be hotter. So let me just demonstrate that we've got 55 watts at full tilt at the keyboard deck. And if we were to put it back here next to the exhaust vents, we can push it well into the 60s in terms of decibels. And there we have it. After the fan noise testing, let's take a look at some of the thermals here. We'll use our handy temperature gun to take a look at some of the temperatures that we have all across the keyboard deck. But just to summarize it, the laptops this year are doing quite well, with the exceptions of a few models which are still really heating up a lot. The keyboard deck on most of these laptops is nice and cool and very, very fun to play with on the device itself. So let's fire it up here, and we'll start quickly with the WASD area. So we can see here that we've got, in the mid 30s to high 30s, about 40 decibels, or excuse me, 40 degrees Celsius, but very comfortable to play. Across the top here, it stays nice and cool because actually the ventilation is venting out the back and out the sides. So we've got 4 vents this year, and we've got about 50 decibels across near the exit for, or the exhaust for. So the vent is around here. You've got ports in this area, and then another vent roughly around here to speak of. So again, cooler on the sides. In the center, it gets closer to 40, 45. Maybe there's a hot spot of 51 somewhere. But overall, if you look at the keyboard deck here, try to keep my laser pointer in view, you can see here that we're getting right around 40 decibels, or 40 Celsius, excuse me. And because the GPU is here, it's a little bit warmer here, but when you have your hands here in this position, it's nice and cool down here. So if we look here, it's 36 degrees, on the control key function, 40-ish, 45 around the space key, but it's noticeably warm. But I'm running in performance mode here. Let's toggle this performance mode, but nothing pretty crazy, I would say. 40 degrees. It feels a little warm to the touch. Obviously, this doesn't have the vapor chamber that you get in the Legion Pro 7i, so keep that in mind. But despite the fact that it has just, traditional cooling with 2 fans only and not the 4 fans like you're getting in some of the Alienwares, or perhaps the Titans from the MSI series, it's actually a pretty well-to-do laptop. I think this is actually quite acceptable. So 40, 42, 43, and if you roll off to the sides here, you're right around 40. So it gets warm, but nothing extravagantly difficult or hot, I would say. But 50 decibels seems to be the max, and that's generally around here. And some area in here, it gets close to 50 because that's where the GPU actually is within the device. Lenovo always does keyboards very well. They've been in this game for a very long time, and they're between their consumer and business level lines of laptops and now to the gaming laptops, they're doing a very good job with performance and also with the basics such as the trackpad and the keyboard overall. So in this device here, the Slim 5, we've got the typical smiley key Lenovo keyboard with a number pad that's kind of squished in onto the side. I personally do not like this look. I would prefer to have the keyboard centered, and particularly for gaming, you don't really need the number pad. I know they're trying to reuse the same components that they've sourced in their supply chain. So most Lenovo laptops look like this with this particular keyboard deck. Nothing disfamiliar here from the Lenovo Legion Pro that I reviewed not too long ago. So very, very similar layout. This, however, the main difference is that this is a 4-zone keyboard instead of a full per key backlit RGB keyboard. It is still backlit. It's got 3 levels of brightness. So off, low, medium, and high, and then off again. But this one only has 4 zones. You can use the Lenovo Vantage software to configure that using the presets and also customize to your heart's content. The keys have a decent travel. I mean, as you'll see here in a moment in the keyboard typing test, it's not a bad keyboard. I think it really gets the job done. It's a happy medium between mushy and very clicky and tactile like you'd have on a mechanical keyboard. No complaints really, other than I wish that they would have removed this and moved the keyboard to a centered location or a position. As for the keypad or the trackpad itself, it's again a smooth surface, but this is plastic. It's a mylar surface. The click is pretty good. There's no rattling anywhere, and it presses very nicely. I like to use the Windows multi-touch gestures as well, and they work fantastic with the occasional press, but I think that is the story of any Windows laptop. Until those things get figured out, that is going to be my complaint with Windows trackpads forever. The other thing is it has Windows Precision trackpad drivers, which means you get the drivers right out of the box with Microsoft, and all of the multi-touch gestures are baked right in. No significant complaints about the trackpad. It gets the job done, and I think that's good enough for a budget-oriented mainstream offering in a laptop. All right, and we'll do a quick typing test here on the Lenovo Smiley Key keyboard, and so you can hear the sounds and the tactility and the feedback of this keyboard. So let's begin. Okay, so overall a pretty good typing experience. There is good tactility. We're somewhere between mushiness and having the tactile feedback you'd have with a mechanical keyboard. Overall, very acceptable typing experience. You'd be not out of place whether in an office or in a school environment to get all of your typing done. Quite comfortable keyboard, and Lenovo always does keyboards just right. Another quick thing I want to point out here with the Lenovo Legion Slim 5, this one here has an AMD CPU, particularly Zen 4 CPU that's new for 2023. This one is a 35 watt class CPU, which is the Ryzen 7 7840HS. And if we take a look here, this is the 8 core and 16 thread CPU. So we've got the Ryzen 7 7840HS, and we've got 8 actual cores and 16 cores due to hyperthreading here. So because this is a locked CPU, it's a 35 watt class lower performance CPU than the typical 45 watt CPUs you get. You will not have any ability to overclock this CPU. Even if you were to boot into the BIOS like you would with the Lenovo Legion Pro 7i to enable the CPU overclocking ability, so you get the toggle in here in Lenovo Vantage, you will have no such option in the BIOS and thus no ability to overclock in Lenovo Vantage. This is a webcam test of the Lenovo Legion Slim 5 this year for 2023 with the AMD Zen 4 CPUs and the RTX 4060. We've got here a full HD 1080p webcam with an electronic shutter switch on the right hand side of the device. So if you toggle that, it will electronically disable or disconnect rather the webcam so that you can have it off, because there is no physical slide shutter as it is on some of the Lenovo business laptops lines and series. In addition, there is no infrared camera available on this particular model. The Lenovo Slim 5 with AMD this year is only offered with regular webcams, no IR camera, so we're missing that feature here. Plus, there is no additional biometrics of any other sort on this particular device. And that said, you've got dual microphone array though, so you are getting a little bit of noise cancellation and crosstalk, cancellation as you're recording and doing your audio. But overall, the quality is pretty decent, a little bit grainy, but handles lighting overall pretty well. And I think it's one of the better webcams, even with the upgraded 1080p FHD sensors this year compared to the competition. And to say a few words about the battery life in this Legion Slim 5 with the AMD Zen 4 CPU, we've got an 80 watt hour integrated lithium polymer battery here with quick charge on board. They call it super rapid charge now, and basically that allows you to get from 0 to 50% in 30 minutes, or about 0 to 100% in a little over an hour. I believe 80 minutes is the figure here. Now, Lenovo rates this as having 5 hours of battery life, and I think I've gotten roughly about the same here over 2 weeks of testing or so. I was not able to get beyond, much beyond 5 hours, a few minutes, depending on the workload and what I was actually doing. But that said, it can charge up pretty quickly. Despite 2023 laptops making lots of battery life promises, battery life hasn't actually improved all that much over the last year's laptop lineups. So that said, depending on your use case, you're going to see about 5 hours even from this AMD CPU, which are generally better in battery life performance. But with the Zen 4 CPUs, AMD's basically cranked the knob up for performance and wattage to basically compete head-to-head with CPUs in the Intel lineup, and basically they're competing on the frequency and the megahertz and the clock speeds rather than efficiency overall, which they've had in the past. However, their low power offerings are pretty significant. I do have some reviews coming there, so stay tuned for that, where I'll really highlight what Zen 4 is actually capable of. But for this mainstream laptop offering, you're going to get about 5 hours of battery life, as Lenovo claims. If you're watching videos, you're going to hit about 7, potentially 8 hours. So I think these figures that they've listed here, about 8 hours for local video or 9.7 hours for local video, is at 150 nits, which is the brightness turned 50% down. I'm not really sure who would watch videos that way. It basically, loses contrast and brightness and overall clarity of the picture, but it is what it is. 5 hours is what you will reasonably expect from this laptop. The other bonus feature is you've got one USB Type-C port here on the left-hand side with power delivery at up to 140 watts. So if you've got just a USB power brick around, you can quickly charge up on the go. And on the back of the device, you've got a USB Type-A port that is used for charging your phones and tablets and other devices when the power is off or the laptop is off. So you can do power sharing that way. One of the main reasons for picking up a Lenovo device this year is because they're offering some of the fastest RAM that's available, socketable fastest DDR5 RAM in their gaming laptops for this year, which is running at 5600 megahertz. So let's look at that, and let's look also at the network connectivity situation here. So if we look at the task manager, and if we look at the performance tab, go to memory, we're running here. We've got 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes SODIMM, removable, memory sticks at 5600 megahertz speed. So a total of 16 gigabytes of RAM. You can pop these out at a later date, throw in 16 gig modules for a maximum of 32 gigabytes at 600 megahertz. So thank you for that, Lenovo, not cheaping out on a few dollars to give us the slower and performance hindering 4800 megahertz RAM, because we know faster RAM makes things faster. And connectivity on this device is provided thanks to the Realtek PCI Express based socketable Wi-Fi adapter, which includes Wi-Fi 6E as well as Bluetooth 5.1. I don't understand why still Lenovo is offering or providing a device that still has Bluetooth 5.1, considering the latest devices are now coming with 5.3, and well into this year now. We're almost into August, so 5.3 should be the standard. It also brings the low energy device connectivity to Bluetooth devices, which means you get better stable connections and longer lasting battery life because it's not constantly pinging the device here. But overall, the Wi-Fi performance has been pretty good. It tops at about 40 megabytes per second for sustained transfers, and the Bluetooth has been stable with a wireless a mouse, a keyboard, and multiple devices connected without any issue with connecting or maintaining those connections even while running gaming or high performing tasks. So overall, a pretty good and well spec'd out laptop. Connectivity is pretty good, storage is pretty good, and I think performance and spec wise, it hits all of the sweet spots that you can ask for without leaving too much off the table, considering the price point of this particular laptop. We'll talk a little bit about value, value proposition, the price point, and finally the overall conclusion next. Finally, we cannot talk about a gaming laptop without talking about its gaming performance. So this here, we've got the RTX 4060. That's the maximum possible you can configure the Lenovo Legion Slim 5 with currently at the moment. And the 4060 actually gives very, very acceptable performance at QHD plus resolution. I've got Jedi Survivor fired up here. Let me show you the settings. I'm running in medium mode because I think that gives a very nice playable frame rate, despite using FSR2 here to get that extra boost. And I've got ray tracing turned off because it's simply far too taxing for this laptop and the 4060 to be able to handle with playable frame rates. So let's jump right into the game. I'll toggle on my metrics here. As you can see here in performance mode, so I'm running here in performance mode, and I'm getting roughly around 100 watts on the GPU. Despite the max TGPU claims of 140 watts, I think there's very rare scenarios when you would actually see those types of metrics on the 4060. The 4050, 4060, and 4070 fall into this camp this year. I've talked about that elsewhere in my videos. So let's jump right in here and we'll roll around. You can see here that the frame time is actually quite nice. It's in the low teens, and I'm getting right around 70 FPS. If I was to disable the FSR2, it would be 50% or maybe perhaps more jump in the frame rates. But this is right at about 60 FPS, and it's a very nice and playable game. You don't really need very high FPS for this game in my opinion, but it looks very good. The visuals are fantastic, and if I run around here, I can look at that. It's a very nice, visually appealing game. Now, if I toggle here to quiet mode, I think this is worth demonstrating. They basically halves the performance of your GPU, so you go from about 100 roughly watts to about 60 watts, so rather 40% reduction, excuse me. So 40% reduction on the CPU or the GPU power, but you can see here that my sound level has dropped to almost a silent laptop, and I'm still getting right around 60 FPS with the occasional dip. I mean, obviously it dips down to the 1% lows we can see into the 20s here, but that's because I believe this game needs still a little bit optimization. It's quite resource heavy, and it need not be. If you look at that second figure, it's using well over 6 gigs of VRAM from the GPU, so it really could use a little bit of extra tuning there. And I'm also using about 13.5 gigs of system RAM, considering this is the only thing I've got running and all of the background apps are pretty much closed. So the other toggle is if we go into auto mode or balanced in Lenovo Vantage, we get another boost, another basically 50%-ish roughly boost to around 80 watts on the GPU. So the figures are 60 watts, 80 watts, and 100 watts. You get a 20 watt drop for each mode as you toggle through them on this laptop. You can see here I'm still right around 60 FPS. I mean, we're still getting those lows into 1% lows into the mid or even low 20s sometimes. But between 50 and 60 FPS, and the fact that you have a AMD FreeSync Premium and G-Sync display here, you don't get any of the screen tearing, any of the adverse effects you'd have. If you had a 4070, I think this may be able to lock at 60 FPS, or if you enable VSync, Just going to make sure that I don't have that enabled by accident. Yeah, no VSync. But if you enable VSync, you can get that extra boost. So another thing I want to show here is if you turn off FSR, let's turn this off. Hopefully it'll allow us to do this without having to reboot. Yes, okay. So with that off, we get a drop definitely to the CPU, or excuse me, the frame rates. And if you look at the frame times, our frame time has almost doubled from the low teens now to nearly 30 milliseconds on the frame times. We're getting a lot more spikes, so less consistent. And that means we're right around 40 FPS now. If we toggle into the performance mode, it gives us 100 watts on that GPU. We're still in the 40s. Not the best frame rates for playing this kind of game, but I think it's quite acceptable. And of course, if we go into toggle mode now, it's going to be pretty awful, actually, right near 30 FPS. It's choppy, it's stuttery. I can sense that judder as you play and run around in this game. Not the smoothest experience. If you're on console though, 30 FPS looks actually pretty good because you're sitting far enough away, and so on and so on. And I think 60 FPS definitely should be the standard and the the minimum frame rates for playing any game, whether it's 1080p, 2K plus, or even 4K resolution. 60 FPS, you gotta have it. So that said, enable the FSR2 feature. It really gives you a nice boost in this particular game, even though you have an NVIDIA GPU. And the toggles, depending on what game you want to play, you can very much play in the quiet mode on this game, and many other games for that matter, with the RTX 4000 series, including DLSS 3 and frame generation, which actually are not featured in this game here because this was an AMD sponsored game. So the next thing we'll do is jump into a game that does have both DLSS 3 and frame generation, and I'll demonstrate that experience as well. Okay, here we are in The Witcher 3 now. This game supports both DLSS 3 plus frame generation, so I'm going to be using this to demonstrate how you can significantly improve your performance with some of the features that NVIDIA has built into this game, or rather Cyberpunk, or excuse me, CD Projekt Red has built into this game. And by enabling those NVIDIA specific features, how you can definitely improve the performance, and particularly what the RTX 4000 series and the RTX 4060 is capable of in this laptop with those features enabled. So let's look at the initial settings here, and we'll talk about where the performance sits on the baseline. So I've set this to the native resolution of this display. Frame generation has been turned off. And if we look at the graphics settings, I'm running in the Ultra preset. That means no ray tracing and no DLSS either. So we're running basically everything here on Ultra settings, and Hairworks is turned off just to get a good comparison baseline. So if we start with that, we've got about 33 frames per second, 30-ish, but it actually during gameplay, the frame rates you're going to be seeing is around the low to mid 20s. Not a good playable experience, quite choppy and a little bit stuttery if you were to ask me. Now, we'll start enabling those features one by one. So the first thing we'll enable is if we'll go into graphics, we'll turn on DLSS. So let's turn this on here. We'll leave it at quality mode, and everything else stays the same. We're still in Ultra, and I have not turned on frame generation as of yet. So with that enabled, keep in mind we were getting about high 20s as we run around in this game and kind of play. And we've already got about a roughly 40%, 30 to 50% boost depending on, again, the scene. And we're hitting right around 30 FPS, a little bit above 30 FPS. And we're getting respectable frame rates. It's actually playable at this level. If you were to enable ray tracing, it would tank a lot further. But I don't think ray tracing actually adds a lot to this game, despite it was a feature that was free and released later on. But let's go here. So the next thing we'll do is let's enable also frame generation. And I want to demonstrate here what is the bonus that brings to this game here. So now we've got frame generation enabled, and we've got our settings still set to DLSS enabled, and everything here is set to Ultra. With this settings, we're now seeing about 50, mid 50s, maybe, yeah, in the 50s, depending on where you are, again, in the particular scene and how much is on the screen there. So at this frame rate, you're not getting that choppy 30 frames per second jitteriness that you would get from previous years, but you've got a pretty respectable 50 frames per second. And with the Freesync Premium on board and the G-Sync display that we have in this laptop here, the Legion Slim 5, it's actually a pretty good playable experience. I would not be complaining about this. And just to make sure that we're running in the proper mode here, this is another thing I want to demonstrate. I'm running in the quiet mode. So that was why I wanted to do it this way, to show how quiet nearly silent. I'm running with this laptop at 60 watts only on the RTX 4060. I'm getting about 60 frames per second just by enabling DLSS 3 and frame generation using the RTX 4000 series. Now, if I was to jump up to the performance mode, excuse me, there we go. So we're now going to get about 100 watts onto that GPU, and the fan will definitely start to ramp up. We've now got about... Okay, we'll give it a minute here to ramp up fully and that power to get pushed to the GPU. We should hit about 70 FPS. That's what I was seeing with DLSS and frame generation both turned on. There we go. So now in performance mode, it's a little bit all over the place, but we're getting about 80 watts to that GPU, so it's a 20 watts boost, and we're locked at about 60 FPS baseline, and everything's nice and smooth and very, very playable. Okay, and if we were to demonstrate the balance mode, somewhere in between, we should be back to 80 watts, but we're still getting close to about 70 FPS. And I just want to demonstrate, to close out this segment, is if we enable ray tracing, I want to show you what happens. Let's go to Options, Video, and Ray Tracing. And keep in mind, ray tracing has a significant hit overall to performance, and I like to put global illumination to quality settings because, I mean, if you're enabling this, you want all of the goodies, right? So turn everything on here, just put RT Ultra, there we go. And you can see here that all of the textures start to pop back in with the ray tracing enabled, and you can see now that we've got more than a 50% reduction. We've got from 70 down to 45 frames per second roughly. So it's still playable. But again, you're going to get a little bit of choppiness because 40 frames per second isn't actually the smoothest experience. But considering the fact that you have G-Sync on board here and Freesync Premium, it's actually not too bad. You don't get any tearing or anything like that visually on the display, and you can run around and play quite comfortably like this if you so choose. So that'll wrap it about for the gaming performance of this laptop. I think this is very capable. The 4060 actually is the most impressive GPU in my opinion in the RTX 4000 series stack, thanks to the DLSS 3 and the frame generation tech. If you really want balls to the walls, go get a 4090 and top of the line. If you want to save some money and be able to do everything on your laptop, 4060 is my recommendation. Alright, so based on what we've seen thus far, the performance on this laptop is pretty good. The build quality is pretty sufficient. It hits all of the boxes. It's got an aluminum top, plastic bottom. It's not too loud. It doesn't get too hot. It runs all of the games that you can imagine, the AAA games at nearly 60 FPS, particularly if you enable the DLSS 3 plus frame generation or use the FSR tech, because that works just as well on the NVIDIA GPUs. And with that said, the CPU has performance for days. The GPU has very good performance for gaming. And overall, it's a very nicely rounded package. Storage is expandable, RAM is expandable, the Wi-Fi card can be swapped out later, and I think you're not really losing much by going with the Legion Slim 5 versus getting some of the higher tier Legion Pro series. The only difference is that with the Lenovo Legion Slim series, you can only top out currently at the 4060. There's no option for the 4070, 80, or 4090. This is again a more mobility focused laptop, weighing in at around 5 pounds. So the focus is going to be on trying to deliver and balance all of those factors, and I think Lenovo's done an excellent job. At a price point of around $2,000 retail Canadian, it isn't a cheap affair though, considering that you can get 4060 laptops for much cheaper, a few $100s cheaper. But since Lenovo is often running sales on their laptops on their website, and also check the retailers if you're looking to buy locally, you can get some pretty steep discounts. For example, I picked this up at $15.79, I believe, which is more than a 20% savings on the actual retail price of this device. At that level, considering the balanced offering that you're getting, I think it's an acceptable deal, and actually a superb offering. That the fact that you're not really getting any big hits. You've got a high refresh rate screen. It's bright enough. It's colorful enough. It doesn't have any lag or any other strange issues. The port selection is excellent. It's well rounded and well placed around the device. I would say this would be a very big seller this year, and a great buy for students, for workers, and casual gamers alike. If you're a hardcore gamer though, and you know that you need those frame rates, you're going to be looking at something else in a different price class altogether. So a great combination and an unholy alliance between the AMD Zen 4 CPU here and the RTX 4000 series GPU, but hey, it delivers, and I think that's what really matters at the end of the day. You know, with the price point and sales, like I said, look around and keep an eye out. You can swing it for around $1,200 US, roughly. I've seen it down to that level, or about 1,500 Canadian, a little bit over. And at that point, I think this is a sweet buy. So it gets my full recommendation and a thumbs up for the 4060 and for the Lenovo Legion Slim 5, and that AMD Zen 4 CPU is bringing the horsepower like no tomorrow. So that's all I have to say here for the Legion Slim 5. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and share my video on social media, and also subscribe to my channel for more coming content in the next weeks and months, similar to what you've seen today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the box below, and I'll do my best to get to them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.